Hi, welcome back. Today is how to make 5 mini tree toppers, stained glass style. This is the last of my Christmas tree and star topper series for this year. Number one, this is going to be made out of flat glass. So I used a pattern. I drew out my 2 pieces of flat glass that I was going to use for this. I'm using a ring saw to cut out. It's actually sped up a lot. Like this is probably 8 times, so it's nowhere near this fast when you're cutting. But anyways, the saw is really kind of needed for a shape like this. I guess you could probably do it by hand. It would just take a lot of time and lots of little cuts to manage doing that. So the nice thing about a ring saw is that it cuts it really perfectly and the edges are all smooth. Now I also made some little rectangles, and as you can see I foiled all this stuff using a full sheet of the 7/32 inch foil. I have little wires that I'm sticking out on each point of this star as I'm going, and this will become apparent in a couple minutes. So I made these rectangles and I'm just doing 1/2. See, I'm adding a wire to that. I'm just doing 1/2 of the star. The other side of the star I'm going to have to do later after I've added the lights and everything, because I can't really add the lights when and then solder afterwards, because then I'd leave like flux and stuff and I might melt the wires. I don't want to do that. So anyways, so here I am soldering it all together. I have one wire sticking out of each one because that's what I want. I'm leaving the bottom section open because that's where I'm going to attach it to the tree. In fact, I decided that that was really the wrong one to leave open, so I ended up taking one of them off, so that, I decided, well, that's not the right one. But anyways, so as you can see, I left 2 of them open. And then I tinned everything with solder, so I made sure the inside and the outside was all soldered together, because I didn't want any of the copper color to show. Now, you can see these wires that are sticking out at each point. Those are going to be where I add my beads. So in a minute I will show the beads. As you can see, I'm filling all these areas because I want to be able to have light go through, and I want the light to go through the glass, not actually go through the cracks. So I'm using the wires that I had there, and I put a bead on each of the ends of this star. So they went up one side, and then I looped a bead into it, and then I soldered the wire flat on the other side. So I ended up with a bead at each of the points. Made sure everything was properly soldered down, and the beads I used were AB, so they had like that Aurora Borealis coating on them, so they show different colors kind of as they lit. I wanted to make sure that the top was going to fit nice and smooth, and then I tinned the top so that the top is the same silver colored as everything else. And this is the star when it's done. It was fun. Now, of course, the lights didn't actually go to the bead holes, but it still looks pretty. So now I have one of those macrame hoops that you can buy that are already metal, and they're shaped like a star for this one. And I foiled it so that the solder would adhere to the hoop. These are also sold like as dream catcher hoops, so you can get them in different sizes, and I'll put that in my description so you can see where you can get them and what the sizes are. And then you want to solder a crystal that you happen to find. Now that's the tricky thing, is to find these large crystals. And so keep your eye out at hobby stores and stuff, because they're nice to have when you want to do a project like this, and they're just kind of hard to find. And then I have some other crystals that I'm using. They're kind of teardropped crystals, and I'm using them on the little points. Now, as you can see, I foiled both the round one in the middle and these little teardropped ones before I attached them. Now, of course, the teardropped ones are so skinny that I probably use more like a quarter or a sixth, or maybe even an eighth of the thickness of the 7/32 inch black backed foil that I always use. So I had to cut that into strips to wrap around these crystals, because you want to make sure that you don't overlap into the center of the crystal and take all the nice crystal properties away from it by covering it up with a piece of foil. And then you want to attach it with your solder. Now make sure that you don't heat it up too much, because it will just pop out of its foil, because the foil is just, I mean, yes, it's sticky, but it's not really like encompassing or wrapping around the star, the crystal. So you want to be really careful that you don't heat it up too much. So you might want to heat up one area of the crystal and then go back and do another area. So heating up the whole crystal at once might make the glass just pop out of it. So you just got to be really careful. So I'm using some scraps of solder that I happen to have. And obviously I'm not washing this in between soldering. So yeah, that's why it looks kind of gooey and yucky here. But it looks really pretty once you are finished and you've washed it off nicely. And you're going to want to turn this over and have the other side soldered also, so that everything is as secure as absolutely possible. As you can see, it's a very small star, so it heats up pretty quickly. The whole thing will heat up pretty quickly. This particular star, I ended up attaching LED lights to the back of each of the points of the star. As you can see here, I just kind of wrapped the LED lights around, and then I used some super glue to attach them, so that when it's lit, they all light at different times. It was very pretty. Now this particular flat star, I used my own wires. So I used some 16 gauge copper wire and bent it into a star shape. And now I am attaching it to a crystal. And so I attached it to each point of the crystal. Now this is why it's very handy to have a whole bunch of glass crystals already foiled, or at least already purchased, so you have a bunch to choose from, so you don't have to make your star exactly the right size. You can make a star, have it look awesome, and then figure out what crystal you want to put in it. So now I have my center crystal done, and then I was just trying to find some other crystals that I happen to have to fill the rest of it. So I have a tear-shaped one, and then I have a little 10 millimeter crystal at the end. And both these little crystals are extremely kind of time consuming and tricky to foil, because you only want to use, as I said before, a very thin piece of foil, and they're tricky to use because they do tend to pop off when you're soldering, but they are very pretty when you're done, so it's worth it, because you do get that really pretty shiny look. So I was putting one on each point and soldering them down. I wanted to make it look, symmetrical. Sometimes I use washers underneath when I am trying to make something like this to hold, silicone washers that I've used in the past to hold it in place. And this is what it looked like when it was done. It was very pretty. Number 4, this particular one, I used a star-shaped bend of the wire itself. So I bent it in, you know, like if you like to draw a 5-pointed star and then just kind of overlap them so that they would kind of stay in place. And I used a similar size crystal in the middle. That push pin I have in the corner right there, I used at times, it's just stabbed into my board, and I used it at times to press against when I was trying to keep something in place as I was working. So this one again has a tear-shaped crystal for the corners, and the tear-shaped ones just worked very nicely because they fit the shape of a star. So that's why I like to use tear-shaped for this project. And there, that one was finished. Number 5, my last one I have, is a star within a star. So here again, these are the purchased ones that you get for either Dreamcatchers or Macrame. You can get them at different hobby stores or on Amazon. And first of all, I usually try to figure out, well, where can I put my little crystals to make it look correctly? And it looks like those small, they look like 10 millimeter round crystals will work very nicely in the corners. So I will put them there. Actually, I think those might have been a little bit bigger than 10. Those might have been like 15 or 18, because I think I ended up using even smaller ones on the inside. So I'm trying to keep them in place and then solder all of everything together, you know, like temporarily where I want everything. And yes, I'm wearing silicone gloves for a lot of these projects because it helps keep your hands from burning. Yeah, this is where I'm putting the 10 millimeter ones. So this is where I'm using little baby washers to hold them so that the crystal ends up being at the same height as the rest of the crystals are already soldered in and the star itself. So I'm using little washers there, and I'm putting the pointy part of the crystal into the hole of the washer, and that's making it stay the right height that I need for soldering so that everything stays where I want it to be. So as you can see, I'm just trying to tack it in place and then finish with going around the outside. And I'm not like trying to heat up one little corner all at one time. So I'm going back and forth to different areas, and that will help it from heating up too much. So I'm going to add some more crystals here and there. And yeah, it's kind of tricky to get them at the right, exactly where you want to. The tweezers I have right there, you might notice that some of the tweezers I have are white at the end. And those are because they're like porcelain at the end, and that makes it so that the solder doesn't stick to them. Very, very handy. And I'm also using a plastic probe that works great. You know, you don't want to get the plastic probe hot because, yeah, it would melt. But it's very handy to use to stab here and there to hold things where you want them to. And the reason I'm covering all of this is because I want it all to be silver. So both stars were foiled individually with the regular copper foil that you'd use for doing stained glass, and then I wired them where they meet where the little one meets the big one there is little wires wrapped around it to hold it in place. So yeah, I could have made these star shapes out of copper wire, which, you know, you can do like one of the last stars. The thing is that it's not quite as well when I do it. It's not quite as perfect as buying them already made. So that's the benefit of buying them pre-made. But of course, the drawback of buying them pre-made is I have not found them made of an alloy that I can actually solder to. So yeah, then I have to wrap them with foil, which is kind of cumbersome and kind of a bother. But you know, it works. So whatever it takes. So that's the two different ways you can decide to get your shapes that you want. Yeah, I'm trying to balance that one in place, kind of off the camera right there. So after I was done with those little guys on the corners, yes, I still have to add solder to fill all those areas. I then had to decide, well, how am I going to take care of the middle part? So again, it's really handy to have a whole bunch of crystals already foiled and at your disposal, and you can decide which ones will fit where. And for a project like this, you don't have to go and then search the stores and stuff to buy crystals. You have a whole bunch, and you can figure out which ones you want to use where for your project. So right now I'm filling in areas of my star. And yeah, it looks a lot better once you've washed it. The flux is not overly attractive to look at. Okay, so now I have to figure out, okay, that's a really pretty crystal I could put right in the middle, but then I'm going to have to put some more of these little guys around the outside. Now I don't have, well, I probably have some crystals that are smaller than 10 millimeters, but that's really, they're really a pain to work with. So I have pretty much limited myself to using only anything bigger than 10 millimeter. So, because if it's smaller than 10 millimeter, it's really hard to encourage the foil to stick to it without falling off once you start soldering. Now I do have stones and stuff, I know. I do at times use things that are a little bit smaller, but I try not to fall in love with anything smaller than the 10 millimeter size, because I know that I will regret it later on when I try to work with it. So just like most of my other projects that I work with, soldering the back of your star is important, both for color, but mainly for strength. It'll help hold all the little parts together, because remember, I don't really have very much foil on these crystals, so if I can get just a tad of solder to stick to the back also, I have a better chance of this star lasting for, you know, many years. I would like these trees to be a nice decoration in my home for years. I don't want them to start falling apart. So there is that crystal topper when it was done. And this was a lot of fun. I like to do this series. I hope you enjoyed. Have a Merry Christmas. And I have to come up with another series. Thank you. Bye-bye.